ये सुंदराकारं सदैक प्रियदर्शनम् अज्ञाननाशकं देवं Sadgurum Muralidharam. Radhe Radhe and many Ram Navami wishes to all our young friends who are all assembled out here virtually. And today I thought we can do a small discussion on a topic which is fairly heavy, but then the whole point of our sessions, our fortnightly sessions, is to stretch our thinking, isn't it? It is to stretch our intellect, expand our heart. And so I'm sure you would be a sport to be with me to join this discussion. And partially this discussion is sparked by the various, current research being done by many brilliant minds all over the world on this very troublesome and something which is very prevalent concept called consciousness. It was some time back, about 16 years back, that I first came across this interesting field called consciousness studies. Okay. There was a lady who came from one of the premier research institutes of India. It's called Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore or Bengaluru. And we were all meeting in one of those forums where we were discussing spirituality, science. Where are the boundaries? Are there boundaries at all? This was in Singapore. And this lady came from, she's a research scholar, postdoc research fellow, a professor in Indian Institute of Sciences, Bangalore. And that's when she said that she's specializing in consciousness studies. And it blew my mind, actually. And so we were discussing, this was 16 years back. And then I realized that there is some very serious research going on consciousness. And I started sort of following it up in a very cursory way. And it was very interesting. And the approach the West is taking, when I say West, it's a generalization. I'm talking about the scientists who come from a premise that mind or anything beyond that is a product of a physical being, which is a product of a physiological being. Okay. So consciousness has to be a result of some brain activity, is what their premise was. And I'm not sure whether it is their premise right now or not, but that was the basic premise. Assumption is it's one function of the brain. When brain is active in some areas, it creates consciousness. Okay. And so that was the premise. And most of the studies still follow that premise. Okay. What do you think this word consciousness really means? Okay. See, this whole inquiry of consciousness had been defined as the very purpose of all human existence. Okay. All the Upanishads talk about it. So it's not a trivial or a trifling discussion to have, but we need to start somewhere, right? Please don't think that we are talking jargon and all here. It's just trying to understand this word consciousness so that we realize how much even the well-read people may or may not know, and how possibly we may have a breakthrough from our Bhagavatam or Upanishads. Because what gives me this tremendous confidence is Oppenheimer and our great minds like Einstein, they all said that when they read these grand truths from Upanishads, even the most advanced scientific theories look like kindergarten subjects to them. So obviously, I mean, people are open to it, and people have recognized its worth, and people have understood its depth and its profundity. So that's what encourages me to sort of bring this up as a, thought starter to understand what we are studying as science in the West may not have all the answers. And maybe the advantage we all have is we have this wonderful body of knowledge, which is called, Sanatana Dharma, Shastras, etc. Maybe we should explore that a little more to sort of help understand these abstruse concepts and maybe put to some practical use, which is what West is really good at. Let me give you a small analogy, which many people generally give. All right. Now, what I am going to sort of postulate may be difficult for you to swallow in the first go, but try. Any thought, any emotion rises in the stage or in the field of consciousness. For example, if you want to actually keep something somewhere, you need space for it. Without space, no object can be placed or kept or even exist. Anything which we have which has a shape, form, etc., needs space. Okay. So, but when you see the object, obviously you won't think about the space which it is occupying. And so, the whole track of our Sanatana Dharma seems to be, this research which you are doing about consciousness, your theories of consciousness, your thoughts, your emotions, your experiences, everything happens in this vast expanse of space called consciousness. Without space, you can't throw a ball, you can't hit the ball with the bat, all that is happening. But it's all happening in the stage. Can I use the word stage? This entire drama of a ball being thrown at a batsman and a batsman hitting it, everything happens in space. But how many of us, while watching a match, realize that there is space? And the person who is batting occupies the space. Without space, the batsman is not there, the bowler is not there, bowling is not there. Everything happens in this unseen, but easily discernible field called space. And let me give you another example. This is what is generally used in almost all religions. Consciousness is compared to light. Okay. Have you ever noticed that when you walk down the street in a morning, you see a road, you see the trees, you see everything. Everything is seen because there is this unseen agency called sunlight. You can't see sunlight. Suppose you don't see the sun, you can't see sunlight. But you can see sunlight through everything you see. Everything you see is but a mere, if I can use the word, reflection or a mere modification of sunlight. But where is sunlight? You can't see sunlight. You can see sunlight only in reflection to the objects which reflects sunlight. But if you are very careful, you realize I am seeing a tree, but actually I am seeing the sunlight which is reflected from the tree. Tree seems to sort of absorb all the other colors and seems to sort of reflect only the green or the various shades of green. And where is this green coming from? Sunlight. A rose absorbs all other frequencies of light and reflects this wonderful rose light out. And so I see it as a rose. What is this rose? Sunlight. Without sunlight, I can't see anything at all. And with sunlight, everything is seen except sunlight. You see, that's the paradox of consciousness. Every thought, every experience, every emotion, every need, every sensory stimulus, everything happens in this so-called sunlight or so-called space of consciousness. And now when they are trying to make consciousness as a function of brain or function of body, do you see how, from our perspective, of course, how limiting that would be, or how misleading that would be? You see? And that's how big consciousness is. And that's the subject of all Upanishads. That's the subject of Bhagavatam, seen in a very technical, Tattva Vichar way. That's the subject of Bhagavad Gita, everything. It's about consciousness. And to make it a little personal, to make it very simple, any thought, which is what the world is, right? If you don't have any thoughts, for you, the world doesn't exist. If you're not able to think, if there is no thought, if there is no sensory stimulation from within, or rather powering of senses from within, as far as you are concerned, there is no world at all, isn't it? So this world is because of what I can see through the portals of my five senses, and recollection, memory, etc. All that happens because of this ever-prevalent sunlight of consciousness, right? And that's the beauty, that's the grandeur, that's how self-evident it is, yet it is not so evident. Unless we ask the question, suppose I go down walking, what do you see? To this day, I have not got an answer which says, I see sunlight everywhere. Have you ever got that answer from a normal person? He would say, I see a road, I see a dog in the road, I see some trees, I saw my friend. That's what we say. The objects which have been sort of made visible, or which have been shown to us because there is sunlight. Without sunlight, we can't see anything at all, you see. And this is just an example. Don't stress the example beyond its purpose. Then it will become a little grotesque. So here, as per our Sanatana Dharma, consciousness cannot be fragmented as a partial function of brain, because it is as prevalent as space. All the thoughts, all the emotions, everything dance in the space of consciousness, you see. And I don't know if you can grasp it, but I'm going to anyway hazard this. Every thought has a base of an I thought, which is the thought that I is always attached to every thought which comes in our heart. Every emotion which comes within us is inseparable from the I thought, you see. And the grandest of all, discovery of consciousness is in this consciousness of I am, I am, I am. And so they say it is self-evident. And that's what they call it as God, if you please. And that's what is the soul, or as Ishan said, super soul. Everything is made of that consciousness. Within the consciousness, there is some various philosophies. Some say that a particle of that consciousness is called soul, and that which is infinite consciousness is called Bhagavan or Ishvara or Brahman. All that is philosophy. Let's not go there. That's for a very different day, when we get through all the fundamentals clear. Then we can do that debate. Otherwise, it can't be done in a logical way, because logic itself is a small reflection of consciousness. So it's like trying to gauge the fire with the spark from the fire. How can we do that? How can a spark measure fire, you see? And so that's a different thing altogether. But here, I hope you're all with me, that imagine, try this. I'm not trying to mock the Western take of consciousness. I'm just trying to say that consciousness, as per Western way of looking at it, appears to be this example. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's just a discussion among friends. When I go into a room filled with furniture, I would tell my friend, hey, can you make space in this room? Okay. And I take a few chairs out, and suddenly I've made space. You see? The space was already there. The space was occupied by some objects. When I merely removed the objects, the space revealed itself as it were. When the objects were there, space was still there. My 100 square feet room was always 100 square feet. If you add the height, whatever cubic feet it comes to. But when I remove some furniture, I seem to get some space, or I made some space. You see, likewise, when you try to look at making space as the way of looking at consciousness, it becomes something very tricky. And I'll tell you why. There is this Upanishad, okay, called Chandogya Upanishad. In that, there are many chapters, but there is a 7th chapter in the Chandogya Upanishad, okay? And the 7th chapter is called Bhuma Vidya. Bhuma means that it's very big, very huge, infinite type of a thing. In that, this Sanat Kumaras are the gurus. And Narada Maharshi approaches them because they are their eldest brothers. Purvesham api purvajaha, it is said in Prahlad Charita. So Narada Maharshi goes to them and says that, I want to know the truth. So Sanat Kumar asks still Narada Maharshi, hey, before I even start giving you some instructions or whatever, precepts, what have you studied before? And Narada Maharshi gives a big list. I have studied Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajurveda. I have studied Vyakarana, I have studied Mimamsa, I have studied Puranas, I have studied this. Big list. And then finally he said, I'm not happy, you see. And then Sanat Kumara says, then you have not studied what needs to be studied, which is consciousness. And while they were talking about consciousness, they stop the lecture when they say, prana is that which is the cause of everything, or whatever. So prana means life force, life. The moment Narada Maharshi heard this, he said, now I understood consciousness. It is just life, which is exactly what science has come to. Like Sanjeev very beautifully pointed out, the scale between 3 to 15, where you try to discern if a person is conscious by the extent to which life force is associated with the physical body. I hope it's clear. And that's when Narada Maharshi of his stature, who is well learned, he thinks, I have reached the end of inquiry, you see. And then he's about to leave. But Sanat Kumaras, out of their tremendous compassion, calls back Narada Maharshi and says, this consciousness transcends even prana, which is life force, or what we call as life, as we see it from a physical standpoint, heartbeat, brain, etc. And then he talks about consciousness is something which is infinite, it's ever prevalent. Anything which happens, happens within it. Thoughts are merely, a little play of consciousness. So are the emotions. And when you go as fundamental as thoughts and emotions, imagine world, all these things are. Everything is the play of consciousness. Unless we realize that, he says, unless you realize consciousness is not in the seen, but in the seer, how can you be happy? So that's how it ends. You get what I'm saying? That's how it ends, and saying the one who does not hear something apart from himself, see something apart from himself, or taste something apart from himself. It's a very coded language. We'll come to that later. The end is very simple. This is a very famous song, Madhura Geetam. Most of you must have sung it. Our Swamiji's genius is in compressing such a great Vidya in one line. So this is what triggered this whole talk today. I was listening to the song and I said, my goodness, only our Swamiji can write like this. In that he has written, there is a song called, in Tamil, Undendridu, Brahmam Ondrendridu, Guru Pada Dhyaname Nandrendridu. In that he is saying, Kanum Kachigalil Yella Kanada Kachiye Nandrendridu. This is Bhuma Vidya for you. This is the final conclusion to whatever we have been discussing all through, which means in all that which you see, that which is unseen is the final purpose or final fruit of all spiritual practices. That which is unseen is the seer, the one who takes the snap. Now you have selfies. That's the whole problem. You see, technology is really spoiling all my examples now. Then there is a photographer. That photographer will never be in the scene. So here, that which is not seen is the one who sees. And Swamiji says, consciousness, you can go to the root of consciousness, or you can go to the real purest form of consciousness when you turn your vision inwards towards the seer, right? And the first step in doing that is to actually start looking everything as play of consciousness. And this is the beauty of the second canto of Bhagavatam. Since you all read Bhagavatam, let me come to that before my time runs out. Our Parikshit is asking Shukamuni, what do a person who is about to die, what is he supposed to do? And Shukamuni says that you have to put in your mind Bhagavan, Dharana. Dharana means unbroken remembrance of Bhagavan. And now Parikshit is asking, how do I do that? You see? And then comes the first chapter of the second canto, Shuka Uvacha, Jitasano, Jitasvasaha, Jitasango, Jitendriyaha, Stule, Bhagavato Rupam. That what you have to do is first control your body by the way of asana, control your inner forces by the way of pranayama, and then be very clear, don't get attached to stuff which anyway we need to leave. And control all your senses, and then do the actual dharana or meditation. Let's make it simple term. Dharana means meditate. What do I meditate upon? Our Shukamuni says, look here, it's not easy for the mind to be in meditation of Bhagavan. Mind has a tendency to waver. Wherever the mind goes, start meditating as Bhagavan is. Which means, look at this entire totality of all your experiences, all that which is the world, all that you have seen, all that you have tasted, all that you have experienced as emotions, anger, lust, greed, everything, our Shukamuni has said, is nothing but Bhagavan. So you imagine Bhagavan, we are in this Bhuloka, right? We are in this earth, and there are a lot of worlds above us. There are a lot of worlds below us. So he says, imagine all these which are existing in this universe. The gross universe, something which is very subtle, like Swarga, etc., are not very gross. They are very subtle words. Imagine all that to be the body of Bhagavan. And when you see a lovely bird flying, imagine that to be the creative, aesthetic sense of Bhagavan. You see, a bird flying free in this vast expanse of blue skies. He is the creative aspect of Bhagavan. So when you look at a bird, you don't have to say, I don't have to look at the bird. No, I have to focus on Bhagavan. No. When you look at a bird, wow, fantastic creativity of Bhagavan. When you are greedy about something, that is the lower lip of Bhagavan. Okay. Death is the molars of Bhagavan. Can you imagine this? Even that which is unjust, that which is adharma, is the backside of Bhagavan. Dharma is the front chest of Bhagavan. So anything which is, which triggers your thought, whether physical objects, they are all body of Bhagavan. Rivers are the veins of Bhagavan. Mountains are the skeletons of Bhagavan. Now you see, our Shukamuni says, the totality is Bhagavan. Do the dhyana like that. So the mind, when it wavers, wherever it goes, it becomes a part of Bhagavan, isn't it? So over time, mind becomes silent, because wherever the mind goes, there Bhagavan is this incredibly creative genius of a dhyana. And many of you know Vishnu Sahasranamam. The first dhyana shown in Vishnu Sahasranamam is also like that. Bhupadav, Yasya Nabir, Veda Suranilas Chandra Surya Uchanetre, Karnavasa, Shirodhya, Mukhavirano, Yasya Vastyamudbihi. You have the whole list, which means all the worlds are his body. His eyes are the sun and the moon. So when the mind is going towards the sun, it is eye of Bhagavan. So it is also Bhagavad Dhyana. When the mind is going towards the moon, Bhagavad Dhyana. When it thinks about all these horses, camels, etc., these are nails of Bhagavan. So very beautifully, Shukamuni is suddenly expanding the heart of a person trying to meditate to include every thought as a part of the totality of what we call as Virat Purusha. That's what is called Virat. Virat means that which is everything, you see. And then Shukamuni says, over time, when you look at everything as Bhagavan, the mind will slowly start asking this question, who is it who is seeing all this? Who is seeing Bhagavan? Who is seeing all these worlds? And slowly the mind will turn inwards and find the fountainhead of consciousness, because every thought is a little wave in this vast ocean of consciousness. Once we start seeing that way, the mind is slowly taken to the depth of the ocean of consciousness, which is what is true joy, which is what is true experience, which is what is the true consciousness without the diversions, you see, without the taints or the flavors or the tints. Okay. And that's the beauty of the second chapters. The start itself is such a lovely start in Bhagavatam. If you look at this genius of practicality of meditation, nobody can beat Bhagavatam, you see. And so Bhagavatam says, first level dhyana is, wherever the mind goes, there Bhagavan is dhyana. Can you imagine this lovely way? No torture. And then when the mind becomes reasonably silent after practice, then that consciousness which is infinite also has a lovely name and form associated with it. And then you do the dhyana of this lovely little Krishna who is our Thakurji, who is actually, like we say, you have ice cream cake, now the whole cake is made of ice cream. Likewise, Krishna's every bit is made of consciousness. Chinmaya Murti na adartham. When we actually sing Venkatachala Nilayam, our Purandaradas Maharaj says, Chinmaya Rupam. Chinmaya Rupam means it's consciousness only. It is not different from consciousness. And that's the form consciousness has taken to sort of relate with us. That's the unique aspect of Sanatana Dharma. It understands the infinite aspect of Bhagavan. In the same token, it also understands a personal aspect of the same infinite consciousness. And so Bhagavatam says the second level dhyana is to actually remember the lovely form of Krishna in your heart, which is the root of all consciousness, which is the lovely form of consciousness. And after that, you realize mind is but a small shadow of consciousness. Thoughts are a shadow of consciousness. And that which exists is only consciousness, nothing else. And that's what we call as realization. And that was the state of Ramana Bhagavan or Kanchi Mahaperiva or our Swamiji or all these great Mahatmas, you see, where they actually see that one in the play of many, you see. And that's the source of joy, that's the source of strength, that's our true identity and the rest, okay? So that's where we finally have been led to now. Okay. So that's what is consciousness as per our Sanatana Dharma.